Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. I'm your host, Dave Coker-Hook, and welcome back to the second part of our conversation about animal agriculture, ecology, climatology, and health. And with me now, I'm pleased to welcome back Glen Mercer, who is the author of the two books we talked about last time, Own Your Health and Food is Climate. So Glen, welcome back. Good to have you here again.
Thank you.
And
during our talk, I invoked the name of Dr. Sailesh Rao, and now here he is.
Yeah, here he is, and he's my second guest tonight. So Dr. Rao, who is the founder of, I believe he's the founder of an organization called Climate Healers, and this is the paper that we're going to be talking about that Glen alluded to recently, and you can download this off of the climatehealers.org website and read it for yourself. So Dr. Rao, welcome.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm very happy that you're here. So tell us a little bit about yourself to begin with. How was it that you got involved in the investigation and assessment and analysis of the impact of animal agriculture on climate?
Well, I'm an engineer by profession, and I used to work on the internet. I was working on gigabit Ethernet. That was my contribution in the internet era. And then I was working on 10 gigabit Ethernet when I came home one day and I saw Al Gore's presentation on TV, and I was so shocked. I told my wife, if half of what he's saying is true, I feel like I'm wasting my time. So that's when she said, okay, if you think it's that important, why don't you study it? And so I started looking into it. And, in engineering, you have to look at every aspect, especially I was a systems engineer. So you have to look at every aspect of a problem and devise solutions for it. And that's what I started doing with climate change as well. And I realized that most people didn't want to even talk about animal agriculture. It's like it was something that was kept off the table,
right?
Or it was sort of mentioned as something peripheral to the issue. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized it is central to the issue, and it's not being addressed. And that's something that was absolutely new to me, because in engineering we look at everything, because we are tasked with actually creating something that works.
Right.
And you're not allowed to ignore things. If you ignore things, whatever you're building will not work.
Right. So as you started to investigate this, what struck you? What having read the report and Glenn and I having talked about it some in the last show, we understand, and hopefully the viewers who are watching got that sense of the percentage of contribution of animal agriculture to greenhouse gases, et cetera. But how did you go about coming to these conclusions? What led you to these awareness?
Yeah, the first thing that led me to question the mainstream narrative was the fact that land actually stores 3 times as much carbon as the atmosphere.
Land? Okay. And you mean as land. In the soil?
Soil and trees, vegetation put together.
Okay.
They store 3 times as much carbon as the atmosphere. And we are complaining that the carbon in the atmosphere has gone up by 30%, which means all you have to do is to increase the carbon on land by 10%, and you will reverse climate change. Okay?
Okay.
And then I discovered that half the trees on the planet have been cut.
In what time frame?
In the last 10,000 years, right? So we have cut half the trees on the planet.
Wow.
So, and we have desertified the planet. And I said, wait a minute, if you bring back the trees that you cut, obviously you can increase the carbon on land by 10%.
So let's talk a little bit about, and Glenn, chime in here as is appropriate, but let's talk a little bit about why have we cut down half the trees that were on the planet? What is, because there are certain things when you think about that, you think about how populations grow, cities need to be a certain place, you need to grow corn and barley and wheat and whatever to feed the populations. So what has been the primary contributors to this sort of chopping. Well, I guess they used to use wood as the source for heat, but not so much anymore. So, what is why did we do this, or what led to this destruction?
The primary reason is animal agriculture. Okay, if you look at all the built land on the planet, all the cities, all the roads, everything put together, airports, everything put together would fit inside Madagascar.
It would fit inside Madagascar?
Yeah, it would fit inside Madagascar. Okay, all the cities, it's only 1% of the land area of the planet.
Wow.
Okay. But if you take all of the land we are using for growing our plant foods, and our plant foods are providing 85% of the food we eat,
right?
In terms of weight. Okay, in terms of weight, we are already primarily plant-based. 85% of the food we eat worldwide is plant-based, and all that food, is grown on land that can fit inside Australia.
That can fit inside Australia. So all the food that we grow to feed humans, the plant foods that we grow to feed humans, that land could fit inside Australia. All the cities and airports and everything else could fit inside Madagascar.
Right. And then you take all the land that we're using to grow animal foods. So feed the animals and then, chop up the animals and turn them into food. All of that land, and the animals are only providing 12% of the food we eat in terms of weight.
Okay. In terms of weight, okay.
12% of the food we eat in terms of weight. And to provide that food, we are using land that is 37% of the land area of the planet just for grazing. 37%. And then you add another 6% for the crops that you need to grow for that. So it's 43% of the land area of the planet.
Wow.
So that is almost, all of Asia, Europe, and a little bit of Africa put together. So it's like, hello, if we go vegan, plant-based, all that land can be returned back to nature.
Wow.
So it was a simple calculation that I did. And I even asked Al Gore during my training. So the training that I was part of the second batch that he trained in 2006. So I asked him that question. I said, if we just return the land that we're currently using for animal agriculture back to nature, can we not reverse climate change? It's a simple thing, right? So you do the calculation on the back of an envelope, and you'll see it. It doesn't require, it requires maybe third grade arithmetic.
Wow.
It's not that complicated to figure out.
And what did he say?
So I asked him that question, and he immediately turned to Roy Neal, his chief of staff, and he said, how did this guy get in here? Because he didn't want anyone analyzing things. He wanted people to just go out and tell his story.
Right. Right.
And to me, that I felt like he was wasting people's times. I mean, he's wasting my time. He's wasting thousands of people their time by making them go and tell stories that are not true.
Right.
And I felt that that's a tremendous waste of human resources. And as an engineer, I find it offensive even, because engineers don't waste time. Because if we waste time, whatever we're working on will not work.
Got it.
So if someone came to my team and I had an engineering team working on climate change and someone did what Mr. Gore is doing to people, I would fire him.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, it's so simple, right? It's like you got to put everything on the table and you have to look at the numbers and you have to figure out what is the right solution.
Got it.
So this is why we did the bathtub analogy. So we have a bathtub analogy to show how would you solve climate change? If you're an engineer, how would you solve climate change?
Right.
So we have the impact of animal agriculture. We call that the killing machine.
Right.
And then we have the burning machine, which is the impact of fossil fuels, as two taps that pour water into a bathtub.
Okay.
And then I ask, you're a plumber, and you are supposed to figure out how to save the baby in the bathtub. So you figure it out. And it's a simple first order differential equation you need to solve. And I bet you that any high schooler should be able to solve it.
Sounds reasonable. Right? Glenn, I can see why having met Dr. Rao and having read his paper led you to write the book Food is Climate. So how did that did the two, Glenn, did the two of you get a chance to meet before you wrote the book? How did that come about?
I contacted Sailesh when I came across his paper, and I asked him some questions, and I asked him to defend the paper and, answer other questions that I didn't see within the paper. And, everything checked out, and everything, as Sailesh says, is really pretty obvious. It all comes down to whether or not you're willing to question the assumption that people need to eat animals.
Right.
If people need to eat animals, and we need to have all this grazing land, and we need to use 6% of the Earth's surface to grow feed to give to the animals, and we need to eat fish and catch fish to feed to cows. If we need to do all that, then Sailesh and I are wrong.
Right.
But we don't need to do that. Sailesh and I aren't eating animals. Dave, you're not eating animals. So we obviously don't need to do that. So if we don't need to do that, then Sailesh is right. Then we can free up the grazing land. We could free up the land used to grow feed for animals. We could protect the oceans, and we can draw down more carbon dioxide than we're emitting.
One of the interesting things about what you just said, reflects back to a conversation I had recently with a gentleman here in the Bay Area, and he was very adamant about the fact that we are overpopulated, and that's the reason that we have these problems, because we have too many people on the planet. But it sounds to me like if we were to return the land back to nature that we're talking about, and population-wise, we're only occupying, with all the stuff that we're doing, we're only occupying the size of Madagascar or even Australia, if that much. It's like there's plenty of room for people, and we can feed them all if we do things in a different way. I'm curious about something.
Let me give you my response to that, which is we can grow enough food to feed the current population, and we could grow enough food even to feed a population that's larger than what we have now. At the same time, every problem that we face gets harder to solve the more people there are. So I think we need to keep those two thoughts in our minds at the same time. One, that the leading dilemma we face is that we must save the planet from the climate emergency, and the only way to do that is to stop animal agriculture. If at the same time we can find good ways to slow down population growth, that's all to the good.
So let's talk a little bit about this focus. Because both of you have commented on the fact that the primary focus of attention for on the climate initiative has been with fossil fuels, and the information that's now available that has been presented, leads one to looking obviously in the direction of animal agriculture. So. But the media, the political climate, and most climate activists are sort of laser focused on this issue of fossil fuels. Why is that, and what do we have to do to get people to kind of wake up and realize that that's only a small part of the problem?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. I say that we are in a double Galilean moment in human history, meaning there are two false axioms of our civilization that we need to address. Galileo had to convince people that the sun does not go around the earth goes around the sun. And that was the start of the scientific revolution. Because until you thought that the sun goes around the earth, there was no way you could have come up with a theory of gravity or any of the other stuff that we did in the scientific revolution. There would be no Newton. So it's only when we accepted that the earth goes around the sun and not the other way around that the scientific revolution started. Mm-hmm. In the same way, there are two fundamental axioms that we need to overcome if we really want to have a sustainability revolution. Two of them, not one. And both these are axioms in our civilization. And you can say that they're axioms. An axiom is a truth that we take for granted.
Right.
It's a truth that we take for granted. And the first axiom is the axiom of consumerism, which is that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by stoking and satisfying a never-ending series of desires. This is what I call the greed is good rule. Okay, and this is true in our civilization because you see 3,000 ads a day and you don't blink an eye. And there are models that people have come up with, like the MIT World 3 model or the Stockholm Institute's Earth 3 systems model. They all assume that every human being is trying to consume an infinite amount of stuff. So we're all trying to shoot for an infinite amount of consumption.
Right.
Why? Because we're trying to maximize our happiness, according to them.
Right.
Okay. So it's based on this foundational axiom that is absolutely false. As long as everybody is trying to consume an infinite amount of stuff, you will never be sustainable.
Right. Okay.
No matter what we do. Okay. So that's the first thing.
That's the first one. Okay.
Yeah. Now, this axiom is fueled by fossil fuels. It's a burning machine. This is what I call the burning machine that's driving this axiom, the axiom of consumerism. Okay. This is why we keep consuming more and more and more. And the average American has the equivalent of something like 180 slaves, energy slaves. That's how much energy we are using, like 18 kilowatts in terms of embedded energy. And we want more. Everyone wants more. And everyone is saying, hey, Americans have 180 slaves. I only have 40. So I need 182. So, and if everyone goes that way, the planet is going to die. And we are all going to die with it.
Okay.
That's fundamental. Okay. That's the first axiom we need to overcome. The second axiom we need to overcome is what I call the false axiom of supremacism.
Say that again.
Which is the false axiom of supremacism, which is the idea that life is a competitive game in which those who have gained an advantage may possess, enslave, and exploit animals, nature, and the disadvantaged for their false pursuit of happiness. Okay. So I've gained an advantage because of my birth, so I'm going to use it. So because I'm human, I can go and use animals, and because I'm Indian, I can abuse other people. I mean, it's like you have this, and this is set up in our system. The game of money is basically a Ponzi scheme, right? So it's a Ponzi scheme, and those who have gained an advantage are sticking to that advantage.
Right.
And they're saying, I earned it fair and square. And so they're ripping people off at the bottom, but they don't see it as a rip-off because it's part of the game, right? So this is the false axiom of supremacism, and it is absolutely false. This is what I call the might makes right rule. And I point out that there is not a single religion in the world that says that greed is good and might makes right. Not one. And yet, we have built a civilization on these two axioms. And then we wonder, why is it not sustainable? Obviously, it's not going to be sustainable.
So one of the things that I'm, what you've said makes a lot of sense. And I think that a lot of people will at least acknowledge that. They may not embrace it or think that they want to, from a cultural perspective, and Glenn talks about the cultural impact in his book, it's a challenge to make a change. One of the things, though, that is I wanted to ask about, when we look at the animal agriculture global industry, it's a massive industry. We talk about land animals and sea animals, and it employs a lot of people. There's a lot of money associated with it. If we can make this transition, which we should make, how do we do it in a way that's going to empower these industrialists to make a shift so that they can continue to employ people, make a profit, et cetera, but do it in a sustainable way?
Well, that's the problem, right? So you're asking a question of how do I create a sustainability revolution while still maintaining these false axioms? That's what you're asking. And I'm saying it's not possible. It's just like asking Newton, can you create the theory of gravity and pretend that the sun goes around the earth? And he'll tell you no.
Okay.
You can't. So this is why we are facing this dilemma. This is why people haven't been able to figure out a sustainable path out for us. Okay. And things are getting worse and worse and worse. And you can see that. We've been meeting in the UN for 30 years. Okay. And things are getting worse. In fact, I say that if people had been meeting every year to figure out how to destroy the planet as quickly as possible, they couldn't have done a better job than what we're doing.
Couldn't have done a better job than the UN, right? So
Right. That's what
how
they're
do
doing now.
we?
Because they're stuck in this axiom, right? They're stuck in the old model. It's like a tar baby. You're stuck in the tar baby and you're saying, I want to embrace the tar baby, but I don't want to get black.
Right. So let me ask you this question then. What, how have the all of the people who are conscious of and active in the climate initiative, if that population, I don't know how many people there are that would qualify in that, but if that population adopted what we're talking about here, a whole food plant-based diet, and just forgot about the whole burning machine side of things, and or excuse me, the killing machine side of things, and what impact would that have? Would that begin momentum in the direction that we would need in order to achieve the objectives you've identified?
Absolutely. So what will happen is if people start embracing this new way of living where we heal ourselves, right, with the whole food plant-based diet, and simultaneously we lower our footprint by an order of magnitude. Okay. And so basically then you have to you're creating a second loop, so to speak, of civilization. A civilization that's based on health, happiness, and harmony. Because right now we have a civilization that's based on death, disease, and destruction.
Right.
Death for the animals, diseases for human beings, and destruction of the planet. Okay,
Right.
That's what we have today. So if we create another loop that's based on health, happiness, and harmony, what happens is that the sum of the two economic activities will start declining. Okay, as soon as it starts declining, because the old system is based on a Ponzi scheme, it'll collapse.
Right.
And when a Ponzi scheme collapses, people are going to figure out, hey, there's another one that we can join.
Got
And
it.
here is another one that we can join. And so you need to create a new game of money, which is fair to everybody. So no matter what time you join that new game, you should feel like you are being treated fairly.
Right.
It cannot be like the old model. In the old model, it's whoever started it gains an advantage because that's how Ponzi schemes are.
Right.
Right. And it happened to have been started in UK and Europe, and so that's why it is the way it is. If it had been started in Africa, it would be the opposite, right? So we now have to say we have to create a new game in which no matter when you start, when you join, you'll feel like you're treated fairly.
Right.
Okay, and so that's a more equitable game you need to create. And it's a game not about winning, but it's about continuing the game. So basically, currently we have a system which is all about winning the game.
Right.
So we only play, if you look at football or baseball, we only play games which are competitive, in which there is one winner and the rest are all losers.
Right. It's a zero-sum
concept. So this is why the
concept,
civilization is the way it is. So if you create a new system, and a new game that is based on continuing the game. So that's what I call infinite games.
Right.
So you have to create infinite games. And we need to start playing infinite games also as a culture. Meaning, what does that mean? It means create games in which we prolong the game as long as we want.
Right.
Yeah, the object of the game is to continue the game.
Where everybody can win and benefit. So we have less than 5 minutes left in the show, surprisingly. Glenn, from your perspective, how do we get the message out to people?
Well, we have to use every tool we have, which is books, movies, lectures, and just talking to our friends. I've come up with a new slideshow now called A Convenient Truth. And I'm hoping to get the word out with that. And I'm hoping that maybe that could be used in the same way Al Gore used his inconvenient truth. Maybe other people can present many of the points within that slideshow.
Got it. Okay. And Dr. Rao, from your perspective, what else do we need to do in order to get the word out? I mean, clearly the information is there. It is, accessible. You're able to assess it. You're able to validate, etc. So now, the word has to get out to people. How do we get the word out?
It's again, as Glenn pointed out, it's about storytelling. It's about telling stories that inspire people, that make them say, "I want to be part of this new system, this new loop, this second loop that we are building, right? So I want to be part of that. And I want to help make that second loop happen. Why? Because that's the loop that's going to help us thrive on this planet.
Got it.
If we continue in the current path, we know we're going to die. In fact, there are estimates that MIT has come up with that says 2030, we're going to start having population declines because of people going hungry and dying of hunger. So if we consciously go that route, we are literally causing genocide.
Got it.
And I say, I don't want to be any part of that. I don't want to have any part of that. Okay.
Makes
I want to
sense.
just call it out and say, I'm working on the second loop, the one in which every human being can thrive, along with all animals and all life on this planet.
Thank
Because
you.
we have only one planet and we need to make it thrive.
We need to
That's
make
our
it
job
thrive. That's
as a
good.
species.
So we have just about a minute and a half left in the show. I think I forgot to mention, because I got so enthralled in the conversation, that folks, if you have any questions, send them in to info@referencepointtv.com. We'll get the questions answered for either myself, Glenn, Dr. Rao, whatever. Go up to Dr. Rao's website, www.climatehealers.org. You can visit Glenn's website, glennmerzer.com. I think that's right, if I did that right, Glenn. glennmerzer.com. And, you know, get these books, listen to the information, download. So we've got, maybe a minute left. So I'm going to give each of you 15 seconds or so to summarize. So Glenn, we'll start with you.
All right, well, let's think about some of the biggest problems we have. We have a pandemic. What caused that? Was it zucchini? No, it's animal agriculture. We're the fattest, sickest population ever to walk planet Earth. Why is that? Because we eat animals. And the planet is melting. Why is that? Because we burn forests in order to have grazing land for animals, and we have 25 billion animals on the Earth, so farmed animals. So we solve all the problems, one solution: we eat human food, we get healthy.
There you go. Fantastic. Dr. Rao, your 15 seconds of summary.
Yeah. So my summary is that we are in the midst of the greatest transformation in human history. This is one of the most exciting times to be alive as a human being. And I'm glad to be here with my family and my colleagues like Glenn, working on this problem and creating a new system in which all beings can thrive.
Fantastic.
I look forward to it. I wake up every day, excited to be working.
And that's wonderful. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. We very much appreciate it. It's been an exciting and wonderful conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you are enjoying what you see here on Reference Point. Don't forget to download the information on Dr. Rao's website. And with that, I will summarize and just say that we'll see you next time on Reference Point.